Today we're going to talk again about the natives in the America and how they converted to Islam, because the past two podcasts I also talked about this, but I just needed more time. You're watching Muslim Glory, by the way. I'm so sorry, I keep forgetting to say that. Since the past two episodes, we're talking about how Native Americans converted to Islam. I was trying to keep it like a bit like, oh, did they convert or not? But like by now, I mean, they converted. Okay. A lot of them, like certain tribes, converted to Islam. We have a lot of evidence of that. What happened is actually, I think it was in the year 1905, they actually took away the right for Cherokees to practice their faith officially. It had officially been abolished. The Cherokees could practice their faith. And what's really interesting is that Cherokees were also one of those tribes. It's actually the biggest tribe who were Muslims. There were a lot of Cherokee Muslims. And to know this, to understand this better, you need to know a little bit more about also their history. So I've told you in the first episode about this topic that the Native Americans have been heavily oppressed by the Europeans. Like, it's gut wrenching. Okay. I cry, like when I was researching this, I was so depressed. Like that day was just such a depressing day because it's just terrible to read about. We should all know this. Everybody should know this because it's one of the biggest tragedies humankind has seen. Okay. Anyways, one of these big events where, they were treated very poorly is the Trail of Tears. A Trail of Tears. Let that sink in. There has been a journey that the natives, Cherokee specifically, I think, had to make from one coast to another. Thousands of kilometers. They had to go by foot because they were expelled illegally. That's what the court decided later. Illegally, thousands, I think it was like 16,000 people, 16,000 natives had to go thousands of kilometers in the winter to another place. What does this remind you of? It reminds you of Gaza. Anyways, this is something that this is what's happening right now in the world. It's not something that's new. That's something that you need to know. And this happened to the natives. I think about 25% of the people reportedly died during this journey because it was cold, because these people were deprived from their foods, from their ways of hunting. These people were treated poorly. And so a lot of people died during this journey. What's interesting to know, by the way, about also the natives, which I was supposed to mention earlier, is, I think I mentioned it already, that they couldn't hunt anymore because their animals were killed that they used for hunting, right? Which were these kind of like wolf type of dogs. And the food that they were eating also, the bisons, that's how you say it in Dutch. I don't know how to say it in English. Bisons? I don't know. Anyways, those were killed as well, which really affected the health of natives as well. Anyways, during this journey, the Trail of Tears, according to, I have to tell you about someone else. Okay. Anyways, how am I going to tell you this? Okay. Anyways, during this Trail of the journey, the Trail of Tears, some people actually escaped, and I need to first tell you about someone else for you to understand this story. Okay, listen, I'm so excited about this. Okay, I was going to tell you about another politician who also spoke about this topic of natives being Muslims, okay? And it's a very special person. His name is Robert D. Crane. And he actually had Cherokee roots himself, Muslim Cherokee roots, okay? He is not just a politician. He was an ambassador to the US. He actually was located in UAE. I tried to contact the embassy to talk about him. I couldn't get any clues. Like, they couldn't give me any answers. But basically, I'm like obsessed with story, obviously. He was an advisor of President Nixon as well. And the man wrote books. He wrote about, a lot of issues in the world, but he was a Cherokee Indian. He had blood that was Cherokee Indian, Muslim Cherokee Indian. I don't know. So exciting. He taught also at Qatar University. I think he's still like, I don't know if he's alive. I think he's not alive, but I did find his LinkedIn profile this morning and I was like, oh my God, is he alive? Like, I didn't get it, but like, I don't know. I think he's not alive anymore. Anyways, I tried to contact his kids as well. I am such a stalker, but I'm so interested in this topic. Okay. Anyways. You already know him, okay? Robert Crane, he talked about this topic. He talked much more about this topic. One of these things is the Trail of Tears. He talked about how the Cherokees were forced to make this journey, but he also talks about how thousands of them escaped. They escaped. They didn't go from the journey to the new place. I think they were supposed to go to Oklahoma from North Carolina. Some of them, they actually took a detour. They escaped to like, I think it was kind of like the wilderness or something, like something in the woods. So they could escape and get away from being controlled and monitored by the American government. I love him. Okay, anyways, let's start with the start though. Robert Crane, he owned this magazine called the American Muslim Magazine. And in there, he spoke specifically also about his own experiences being a Native American with roots in Islam. He comes from a very prominent indigenous family. He talked about how Muslims were practicing Islam for centuries before the Europeans came. They were calling out adhans. They were wearing hijabs. They were doing their own type of hajj as far as they could. They were teaching people to be imams, like the natives to be imams, okay? And he comes from a family of one of the last native imams that America has seen. Well, at that time, because I think now there must be reverts as well. Maybe people also kept it going, but at that time, it was punishable. You know, you would go to jail if they found out you were a Muslim. Okay. So, okay. I don't want to talk about everything at the same time. Okay. Anyways, his story, this article that I read by him started off with him explaining that one of the biggest, events in, the history of natives was that there was a museum opened. I think it cost like $250 million to open this museum where they tried to represent all the different tribes, all the different clans, small, big. They tried to give room to everyone, in a way also to kind of like make up. I think the America were trying to make up for what they did to them, like as if you could do that. But okay, anyways, they were trying to do that. And he was, I think, very positive about it. But what he did say is that a part of history was missing in this museum. And that was something that I thought was so exciting. And okay, basically it's opened in Washington. I cannot wait. Inshallah, I can go sometime. I don't want to go to the US basically because I don't want to go there. Like, I've gone to the US before. Like, I used to vacation there every year with my family. And after 9/11, that was basically like torture because like we always had to like, we were always treated, I specifically was always treated like I was, like a terrorist basically because, like part of my family is not Muslim. Part of my family is. And so I have the Muslim last name together with like other family members, obviously on my dad's side. And so, but I would always travel with my mom's side or friends who were not Muslim. Like the last time I went there was actually my friends. They were not Muslim either. And so then they always catch me out of the group. They always take me because like they know, obviously I'm the one with Muslim roots. And it's always been like, when I was younger, I thought that was really traumatizing. When 9/11 just happened, I thought it was a bit traumatizing how they would do that because you felt embarrassed. Like, I always felt so embarrassed. Like, did I do something wrong? It's something about me that's making people angry and they're like so rough and so like, ugh, So anyways, I don't like to go there anymore, especially after they had the Muslim ban. I was like, I'm done. But anyways, if I can go to the museum, I'll go immediately. I don't care if I have to do all the whole border thing. It's fine with me. Okay. Anyways, what he thought was a shame about the museum. And obviously I think I'd be disappointed too. Maybe I shouldn't even go because basically they're not going to talk about Muslims, about the Cherokees being Muslims in the museum. Okay. So this is called the The Museum of the American Indian. And it's opened in a national mall in Washington, D.C. If you're there, you can definitely go. But basically he mentioned that they didn't mention anything about some of the natives being Muslim. And so that's a shame. I don't want to go there. Nah, I'm not gonna go there. Why would I go there? That doesn't make sense. Basically, he said, hopefully, one day they will give attention to another native history, which is about the great book that came from the East, which is the Quran. And so that's what he says. That's where the Cherokee religion came from. It's from a book from the East, a great book from the East. And so he's talking about if they have this expensive museum where they finally want to admit all the atrocities they committed, but they don't want to talk about the fact that also natives were Muslims, then there's a part missing. But I'm going to talk about the part, at least as much as I can. There's been stories made up about them. They're just completely false. Like the way they've been portraying natives is like they were highly uncivilized. And I just told you, when the Europeans came, they found a highly civilized community of people with architecture and laws that were of high civilization. So that's not true, but they've been portraying them purposely as like barbaric, kind of like animal-like people so they could justify taking them out. And that's also a thing that made me feel like, I have to be really careful because I absolutely do not want to do them wrong. My goal going into this is to give more attention to what has happened to them and to also expose the way that they've been treated, because this is a pattern that didn't just happen to them, but it is something that's still ongoing now. Anyways, we're going to go back to Robert Crane. I want to tell you about a clan within the Cherokees, and their name is the Aniyawaya. And why is this interesting for Muslims to know? Because the Aniyawaya was actually concerned with preserving the religion of the Cherokees. And the religion at the time, according to Dr. Crane, who was a U.S. ambassador and he was an advisor to President Nixon, it was Islam. They were preserving Islam. The Aniyawaya, according to him, obviously, they were also being targeted by the U.S. government because the U.S. government abolished in 1905 the Cherokee religion. And if they knew it was Islam, obviously they would abolish it. Okay, it's just so much to talk about. Anyways, they also called the Aniyawaya the traditionalists, and basically Robert Crane comes from a family of the traditionalists. His great uncle was actually, I think, one of the last trained imams in this Institute of Preserving Islam in the Cherokee community. His great grandmother was one of the last women who actually performed the Hajj they actually made in the US in Indiana. It was like it was a kind of like they tried to make a Hajj because obviously they were trying to, honor these traditions, the obligations in Islam, but they couldn't actually go to Mecca. And so his great grandmother performed that. Okay, so basically his great uncle, he was an imam. He was one of the last trained imams, okay? And he was obviously part of this clan called the Aniyawaya. And what's really interesting is that at some point, it became actually something you would get locked up for it. If the US knew you were a Muslim, you would get locked up for that. And so the Aniyawaya, they tried to organize themselves to fight back against the US government, and they founded this group, and it's called the Katua Society, where they tried to fight for their freedom to be religious. However, it wasn't successful. According to Robert Crane, it was a huge failure, actually. Some of the tribes, they did want to perform also, I guess it was type of like jihad or something. I don't know. But it just wasn't a success. I guess, not everyone, maybe they didn't have enough tribe members. Maybe people were too scared. I think, they faced a lot of oppression. So I can imagine that they were very scared. Anyways, that was them. And so he also mentioned Robert Crane. He actually, in the 1970s, went to these, Cherokee traditionalists who were still alive, who were part of like this group of Cherokees who, escaped the Trail of Tears so they could go to the forest or the woods and then practice Islam. And they maintained Islam for a century in that way. And he would talk to them and they would explain to Robert that the only reason they maintained Islam as a religion is because whenever they would get monitored by the US government, government, they would lie to the officials and pretend they had a different type of religion. And they even said they made up some ridiculous religion just to throw them off, which is then written about in actual books. Like the US actually has books on like the religion of the Cherokees, and the Cherokees literally just lied and made stuff up because they were trying to hide the fact that they were Muslim. And so they would laugh about this. Thomas Jefferson copied the system of laws and, governing a nation from the Iroquois Indians. Okay. And that was because he met a very important religious leader, and his name was Handsome Lake, and he learned a lot from him about the religion of the Iroquois. So the Iroquois are known for intermarrying with wait one second. Okay, so the Iroquois, so they got that religion. Okay, yeah. So basically Jefferson copied the American federal system from the Iroquois. The Iroquois was led by one of those leaders. His name was Handsome Lake. And if you look at the way that Handsome Lake was describing their religion, it actually sounded like Islam. And so that's what Robert Crane said. The way that they presented their religion was like they were talking about Islam. And I'm going to tell you some of the points that Handsome Lake actually mentioned. He said, all people came from the same source, a transcendent God, and thus are equal in dignity. Islam 101. All people are equal in dignity, men and women, all races, all religions, all skin colors. Then he said, all religions are legitimate paths to God. That's what the Iroquois religious leaders said, which is what inspired also Jefferson. And in Islam, we also believe that all religions at some point were a divine revelation, right, from Allah, but they have been corrupted. And so, but they believe that it did lead to God as well. Therefore, one should not blame the Christians for not accepting the divine revelation that he was reviving. So he said that about the religion of the Cherokees or the Iroquois, which Handsome Lake was reviving and which he told Thomas Jefferson about. They should follow their religion until they understand that the religion that he was reviving teaches a truer knowledge of God. Also very Islamic. Violence results from ignorance of true religion. Therefore, knowledge is the most powerful weapon against war, and war is almost never the best the best solution to conflict. Very Islamic. You must read, you must learn. And then 4, most important than knowledge is love of the transcendent God, because love is the path to knowledge. Oh, I love it. Okay, basically, I think a few days ago, I actually posted on Instagram this video of a lady who was talking about this whole movement of finding yourself, right? And I just want to say what my friend said about it, because she's a psychologist. And I actually mentioned to her, this is really interesting, because in one of the hadiths, it's mentioned that, the way we Muslims are supposed to find ourselves is by finding Allah. To learn about Allah, that's finding yourself. And so that completely goes against this like new age thing about where we're saying, oh yeah, you need to find yourself, and you just get more self-absorbed. That's not at all the solution. And I asked her, is it also mentioned in the Quran? And the Quran tells us to reflect on ourselves. In earth are signs for those assured faith, and in yourselves, then will you not see? Quran 51, 20, 21 first, the first 21, 20, 21. And then Quran 41, 53, we will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that is the truth. That is amazing. Okay, so I'm so glad my friend responded. So that's what the Iroquois preached, and that's also very Islamic. Robert Crane says there's a high likeliness, or he says there is actually, it should be researched further, of course, but the American system could be based on Muslim values. And if you hear these values, the way that this spiritual leader called Handsome Lake was explaining it, those are Islamic values. Oh, I thought that was so exciting. Oh my God, my time is almost up. What can I do? Okay. Let's see. I think this is everything I wanted to tell you about Robert Crane. Okay. He also mentioned that some people were trying to claim the Cherokee religion, who were, saying it had other other Abrahamic origins, like Jewish, for example. But he said that's actually almost impossible because every prayer by the traditionalist Cherokees started with Ya Allah. Chills. They prayed 5 times a day. They fasted during Ramadan. And so people who don't know Islam, they might say, oh, you know what? The Cherokees were maybe Jewish. They were maybe Christians. They were not. They were Muslims. Okay. I don't know. It's so exciting. I had some interviews afterwards with, other natives as well. And I just want to say they really emphasize how until this day there's still a genocide going on against natives in America. They are being targeted in terms of homicides, sexual violence, poverty, not having access to food. And I think with everything that we know, I really do want everyone to become more aware of this and to reach out to your brothers and sisters among the natives. Because they are our brothers and sisters. Okay, we need to take them in as our own, and many of them are converting as well. She explained a lot about the police brutality that they're facing whenever they want to speak up about it. She explained to me also how her rituals and her way of living is very similar to that of the Muslims. I know she specifically mentioned a few points which were very, Islamic. I mentioned a few of them already, but she also mentioned about how the Cherokees, or like, she's not Cherokee, actually, she's Choctaw tribe, that they would consider the 7 generations after them in every decision they took, which is amazing. She talked about wudu, washing yourself, how you plant trees and get rewards, how you feed birds, you get rewards. She mentioned that, they believe in spirits. They believe that women should be protected. MashaAllah, these people, like, they are Muslims. Okay, they are Muslims. Okay, so that's the last thing I'm going to say about it, because also time is up. Oh, this was the best thing ever. I feel like it fed my soul talking about this. I want to thank you for watching podcast number 7, Muslim Glory. And inshallah, I will see you again next time. Please subscribe to my podcast so I can keep doing this. And if you want to become a public speaker, make sure to sign up for my speakoutcourse.com, because we need more people who speak about the history of Muslims, of the world, and the true history of the world.